I'm still playing with this, what I'm calling station automation, and the idea of it really is that it's supposed to be kind of dynamic and infinite. In that, what I want it to do is this is the front of a set of yard lines here. I want it at any time when it's deemed appropriate to take a train from the front of one of these lines, take it up to the station platform, and I want it to. There's nothing in the app that says use this train at this time. Like here, it's just decided that it's back to line one again, so it's going to take the Trans-Pennine Express Class 158 out up into the yard. And once it's done that, of course, it's now left a gap at the front of the yard. Because if the app is going to be infinite, effectively, then there needs to be space at the back. Everything needs to shuffle. So, as has been very kindly demonstrated there, the app realised there was space in front of the Class 47 and moved that forward. So I am sort of getting to a point, I think, where this can be kind of endless and dynamic. Here's a Class 43 that's just been out onto a platform, and this should stop. I think it's going to hit a sensor very shortly, and there we go. So that's parked itself at the front of that line. There's just in the distance there's a Class 101 that's been patiently waiting. That's come down from the platform, and I think the train, I can't even remember what train it was that left short. Was it Trans-Pennine Express? As that goes up the hill now, that's kind of cleared the lower deck, so the 101 will now make its way around and park up on the back as well. So it is kind of feeling like, for as long as the trains run reliably, it will just run and run. I'm going to go briefly into kind of not how it's doing it. I might do another video on that, but just what's happening. And the way it starts trains is there's an internal sensor that I created on JMRI. That's just something, I called it something like set off AC train. And on the app, when I click on the sort of start station automation button, it fires that sensor and makes it true, makes it on, active. And then there's another part of the app that monitors that sensor, and as soon as it gets notification, as soon as that sensor goes to active, it knows it has to set off a train from the yard, and it always tracks which yard line it last sent a train from. So when it knows it has to send the next one, it simply goes to the next yard line. Obviously it's available, it's aware of what the yard lines are, and that's all it does. As soon as it set the train off, it doesn't really want to know anymore, and it sets that sensor back to inactive, and but then of course the train is driven as it goes around. Now as we come up here, just where this APT has come across, actually there's in the transit, and again I'm trying to use all the JMRI config, although I'm running the trains myself. So there's a transit that it uses. Oh, and it's probably worth actually coming back down here and pointing out that it simply uses a transit. There's a single transit that is set to set a train off from yard line 1. And the app is kind of clever enough to it's also aware of what all the other storage lines are, and I think what it effectively does is, if it works out that it's going to send a train out from, say, yard line 2 block 1, it just substitutes the block. And so you have these sensors, and the software sets the sensor to start a train at the start of the whole process, and off it goes. But then again, it needs to be repetitive, it needs to be infinite. So then what happens when a train that's been triggered gets up, say we've got a clockwise one coming in this way, and again I'm trying to use the JMRI transit config as much as I can. After that double slip, once the train gets onto that line there, that's a new section, and I've put an action in that section to set the same sensor to active again, the one that says set a train off from in this case from the clockwise yard. So as soon as the train gets across that double slip and onto the top line, the set a train off from the clockwise line sensor, gets set to true again, which triggers the app to then go through and work out what's the next train, and again, it uses RFID and all those kind of things to know what trains are in there. So it sort of says to itself, right, last time I set a train off from line 1. This time I'm going to set a train off from line 2. I can see from the RFID tags that the train in line 2 is that freight class 37. So that's the train I'm going to set off this time. And as soon as it sets it off again, it sends that sensor back to off again. And that's really the endless cycle, because of course, as soon as the train has hit that top thing and set another train off from here, that's going to go around the circle, and that's going to get to the top, and that's going to hit this, and that's going to set the next one off. So that's how the whole cycle works. Although that's not actually quite the full story, because the transit that the app uses to launch trains from the storage lines and get them up onto the top deck ends with the station platform. The last section in either of the directional transits, excluding the freight ones, which I'll come to later, the last section, the last block, is to stop in this platform. There's then an action in the very last section, very last block of that transit to trigger a new transit, which is the transit that would then take the train from the platform back down into the yard again and dynamically park that train in the first available space. So this station automation thing is made up of a few different components. And one of those components is the reading of the transit that forms the path from this anti-clockwise station, where the blue-grey class 43 is, back down to the yard. And I've mentioned a few times the word dynamic. And what I mean by that is, although there is this transit that lays out the sections and the blocks and the path to take from this platform to the yard, and I'm being very non-specific about the yard there as well, it's dynamically altered every time it's triggered and run. And the two main dynamic elements that are changed on the fly, if you like, by the code, are which train actually makes the journey, and that is determined by the ID, the block value, whatever the value's been picked up by RFID that's sat there in the platform. And then the second dynamic element over here is where in the yard the train gets parked. And at the minute, the yard's pretty full on lines 3 and 4, but line 1 is completely empty, and line 2 has space behind that class 158 at the front. And the panel backs that up. Here's the anti-clockwise platform with the ID of that class 4328 in it, and here's the yard with a bit of busyness on the 3 and 4 lines, but line 1 is completely empty, and line 2 has space behind that TransPennine Express. So coming over to this shuttler thing, and it's kind of woken up and it's ready. Again, it limits the... I can as well. I was talking about elements. Although this all runs kind of in sequence, if I've got the station automation running, I can also kind of pick elements out for testing and say, just run that. So the portion of it that is just bringing the train back from the platform into the yard is called station automation upper deck, anti-clockwise, platform to yard. Now, as soon as I select that, it's worked out that block value is 28, so it's told me it's going to drive that train. So all I have to do is click start, I think, and I can see over here now on the panel it has worked out a route, and it's also determined that there is space in this first line here, so it's telling me that's where it's going to park the train, and off the train goes on its journey down the chute. And after it's done a fairly boring lap of the anti-clockwise line, it's going to turn up and it's going to park in that line. And a quick skip to avoid having to watch it do that boring loop. It's now coming around to kind of the end of its journey. Once it goes under that bridge there, it hits the points that bring it into the yard. And it should emerge on the right line. And it's going to crawl all its way down to the end there and park itself up. But up here on the upper deck there was a bit of a log jam, and as soon as the 43 has exited the platform, the Class 47 has made its way onto the platform. And I'm now going to run exactly the same transit as I ran before, but those two dynamic elements have changed. There's now a different train on this platform, and over here on the yard the 43 has now parked itself up, so there's a different space available. The space that the last transit used is no longer there and no longer available. So coming over, this is the same app. It's still running. It's just finished that first transit. If I click this reload button here, this is where it kind of reads all the block values and works out that there's new stuff. And this is still selected, but I'm going to select it again, exactly the same one. And over here, there's a difference straight away. It's telling me it's going to drive a different train. So let's do exactly the same thing. Let's click start. And I can hear some clicks. And over here, there's 48. It knows it's a different train. But this time, the route is going to finish in a different place. It's going to pull up and park behind the TransPennine Express. And all of this is calculated. The roster config, I've got the length of all the trains stored in there. All the length of these blocks is against the blocks, and I think it's in physical details. So the app is able to work out on the fly how long the train is, how long each of those mini blocks are. It adds them together, and if it finds that there's enough space on the end of that line that's got 103, the TransPennine Express, on the front of it, then it works out that there is enough space to plonk the 48, which is the BR Class 47, and it sets the points. So the train has gone past me and gone down the chute, so I'm going to wait for it to come back round again. We've made it around, so we're under the same bridge again. You see its progress has changed a little bit on the screen, and I'm going to walk with it this time, I think, as the 48, here it comes. It reduces to a crawl actually, and its crawl is a bit too slow, and this line is a little bit dirty because I haven't had the cleaner across it for a while, so we might well get a stall. Let's hope it behaves itself, seeing as the camera's on it. That rarely happens. So let's follow it along, and I'm going to try not to fall through the loft hatch. Thank you for all of the recommendations that I close the flap, but here we go. There's a sensor there, and it's stopped, and it's fitted itself nicely on the yard line. A comfortable space behind that 103, the TransPennine Express. Again, if we come back down to the end again, there's a comfortable amount of space on the end. I'm now testing anti-clockwise and clockwise at the same time. I'm a little bit tentatively. I've been for a while, to be honest, and it seems now that we're at a point where the only real issues are things are stopping where I wouldn't expect them to stop. I'm not really getting any head-on collisions. So I'm following. This is the first train from the anti-clockwise yard to have left. It left from line 1, and the blue Class 47 there had been behind it, and it's followed it and filled the gap. Having reached the top, it has now triggered that the Super Sprinters triggered the next train to leave the yard, which is the Class 101 from that second line. And what that should also do as well, if we come out and wait for a little while, is it should eventually, those infrared sensors take a little bit of time to clear, just for really kind of safety purposes. But once that sensor has cleared, the app should realise that the space in front of that class 43 is now available, and it's just had a little go. I think it's had a little stall. I haven't cleaned these yard lines for a while, so it's difficult to clean these yard lines because there's always trains on them. But there we go. Class 43, with a little bit of help, has realised that there's a space in front of it, and it's moved into it. Meantime, that Super Sprinter has made it to the platform. It stops in the middle of the platform on the short train sensor, just because stopping right at the end would be a bit silly. And it having made it up the incline, cleared the incline to be allocated to the APT here, which was the first train to leave the clockwise line. There was nothing behind it, so that's just a great big empty line now. But exactly the same way as the anti-clockwise line did, as soon as this train crosses off the incline and onto this kind of the flat upper deck bit, that signifies that it's going to get safely off the incline at least. So that will trigger something down here, and I imagine that the next train to leave the yard down here will be the class 37 that's got the coaches after it. There it goes. So that's now going to get in the queue for the incline. Trying to capture this on a static camera as well, but that 101 that left the yard has now been cleared for the incline, because again the APT cleared it. So the APT is stopping way too far down the platform. It's something I'm going to have a look at. But while the 101 is making its way up, that's the class 37 that's waiting down there. That's its last safe block before the incline, so that will wait there until the incline is free. And well done, Super Sprinter. That's the first train to complete a journey, and that's just gonna park itself up at the end of that yard line one, behind whatever's down there at the front. Meantime, it looks like something being triggered, or no, that APT is just moving into a space, so I think something that was in front of it must have left. At the same time, we've got a little bit of a log jam over here. That APT has now left the clockwise platform, but can't get onto the incline because this class 37 that left the yard a little while ago is making its way up, and this is going to be the next train on the clockwise platform. And of course it has to clear the entire last incline block here before something will be assigned the incline. I don't know if it'll be that APT, because that's only just pulled up and queued up, so there might be something ahead of that APT in the queue. In the meantime, I'm not sure it should have. I'm kind of losing track, but there's a freight train has just left the yard as well. Freight trains are treated slightly differently, and I'll catch up with that once it gets up onto the upper deck. And in fact, it was the APT. Now would be a very good time actually to clean those yard lines, wouldn't it? Was the APT that was next in the queue for the incline, and that's making its way down now with plenty of yard space to choose from. I suspect that class 42, if it's not going to stall, will start making its way towards. It's a very slow starter, this train, but it is moving now. So again, that's going to make its way up to the front of that yard line, which means next time it's that yard line's turn to spit something out. It'll be the 42 that gets spat out onto the track. Oh, and I keep saying meantime, the 101 that was in the clockwise platform has now left the anti-clockwise platform, has now left the anti-clockwise platform, and it's coming down the chute, but it's not able to go any further, probably because whatever left that yard line is still queuing down here probably. If we just come down here, there's the APT making its way into the yard, and yeah, there's a Trans-Pennine Express class 158, is it? Still queuing for the incline, so until that gets cleared for the incline and makes its way onto it, the class 101, which is patiently queuing there, is not going to be able to make any progress. I can hear that Trans-Pennine Express behind me is moving now. Meantime, the APT here is the second train to complete a journey, and it's parking itself nicely at the front of this yard line. There are fewer short trains on the clockwise line, so there are more instances where a train will return to the yard and sit right at the front. Freight train is still queuing down here. It must have ended up third in the queue. That incline really is a pinch point. This is the Trans-Pennine Express that was queuing previously, and with the Trans-Pennine Express now being on the incline and having cleared the anti-clockwise lower deck line, the class 101, which was down here in the foreground, has disappeared under the tunnel under there and is making its way around, and it'll be next to come and shove itself on the end of the parking spaces down here. I missed it, but the 101 has indeed budged itself up on the end of the line behind that class 43. Over here we've got a bit of activity coming along. The class 37 there has now left the platform. It spent quite a while on, it seemed to me actually, but it's going to have to wait as it comes along here, because it can't get onto the incline, which is where it wants to go, because it wants to head back down the yard, because there's another class 37 here coming along up the incline, the freight train. And here is where the freight trains get treated differently, it says, hopefully looking at the points, but they are right. So a freight train, I don't want that to stop in the platform. And there are bypass lines through the station, so it's a slightly different transit. The trains are identified as freight trains through settings in the roster. So the freight train there has actually come into the middle clockwise through line, and that's going to go straight through the platform shortly. Hopefully that static camera will pick that up, because having detected that the incline is now clear, the class 37 passenger train is now heading back down to the yard. And just over this side, there's the 37 freight train heading down. Runs through the bypass line on caution. It doesn't really be running too quickly through the middle of a station, so it goes through on caution, and that's it really. It never stops. It's just going to head back straight down into the yard, as the 37 that was freed up onto the incline is now getting onto the bottom deck and heading for the yard as well. We've been a bit short of platform traffic for a while, really just because of the freight train, and again because of that incline being such a pinch point. So the last anti-clockwise train to have left the platform is stuck here, because the train that left the yard, I don't even know what it was now, and wanted to be in the platform, is still stuck around on the anti-clockwise line somewhere, and should be making its way up now at the same time as the class 37 passenger train has chosen yard line 3 to park itself on, and that should pull up behind this class 422. So it is, I must confess, a couple of months since I made the vast majority of this video, and I have to admit I got it to a point where I was quite proud of what I'd written, and it was the software was working and it was doing what it was supposed to do. I just came to the conclusion that it was too complicated, and also it was too limited by the one line incline as well, and all the queuing that had to be done. I would have also liked to have got the two shuttles working with it as well, but again, they would have hogged the incline for too much, so it would have just made more trains queue and just have more static trains all the time. And the kind of the knock-on effect of having all of those trains stopping and waiting all the time was that some would stall, and that makes it a very high maintenance task, which it was never supposed to be. It was meant to be something I could just sort of stand back and watch. But if I'm always concerned that a train's going to stall, because when a train stalls, it stops using current. So the current detector doesn't know. Once a train is stalled, the current detectors don't know that the train is in that block, which of course will inevitably lead to collisions because a block is shown as unoccupied when it's actually occupied. So although I sort of, and I've enjoyed looking back, I've sort of been through and done some of the editing now, and looking at the video, I did sort of enjoy watching it, but I can't see I would ever do this for fun. I think at the stage my layout's at, and the state of maintenance of my locomotives, they're just not reliable. It's not reliable enough for me to be able to set this running and relax. However, I have come away with some useful stuff because I built it in a sort of modular fashion. Like, say, the yard management, I can just have the yard management on, so I can be playing with manual trains. I can be taking trains out the front anti-clockwise and clockwise, and I have that little bit of software running that will simply move stuff up to the front, shuffle it all around, so I don't have to. Also over here on the station, I've got those transits, and again, the app will simply run a transit. It doesn't have to be all. It doesn't have to have all this sensor stuff and automation stuff going. So I also have that element of I can now say to the app, right, I'm finished playing with that Swallow Class 43 that's on that platform. Take it away and park it for me, and the software will do that, you know, and it will work with. I might be running manual trains at the time, and it will work around that. There still won't be any collisions. So I think I've ended up with some useful tools that I can continue to use on the layout, and I've certainly learned a lot about automation and how it works. But I think my opinion of what I was doing with that, what I was calling kind of platform automation, that was extreme automation, bringing every train on the layout out, having them waiting, having them queuing, and all that kind of thing. That's about as extreme as I can see train automation being, and it's probably somewhere I don't want to go again.